Hello and welcome to Breadmaking with me, Father Stanley. Thank you for joining me in this little workshop where we will learn how to make um, a simple bread and hopefully to learn a little bit about some of the basic principles of bread making. I love to make bread because it's as the title goes, it's the fruit of the earth and work of human hands. A line that we say, a prayer that we pray during Mass, that is very, very real. And I think bread making, as you really get your hands into things, is something that is very, very real. That allows us to see that bread is not just something that comes out of a package, but it's something that is the work of our hands, that we are cooperating with God, who makes everything happen, and then we get to cooperate with God to make something that's beautiful and delicious. So today I'm going to share a recipe that I like very much. It's called a Focaccia loaf. Focaccia is a kind of bread that's very common in northern Italy. It's normally a flat bread that's baked in a pan, but today I'm going to make the same recipe into a loaf because I think it's easier to have a loaf. You can make many loaves in an oven, whereas you can only put one pan in there. And so today we'll look at this, and we'll look a little bit about as well as the mechanics of bread making. So we turn on the second camera and we look at our ingredients. Our ingredients are very simple. There are only 7 ingredients. There are 2 in here. What we have bread flour. We have normal plain flour. They look the same, but the difference is that bread flour has more gluten in it, more protein that allows the bread to stretch. We have rosemary, dried rosemary. We have some olive oil. We have salt and dried yeast, and we have water. The amounts of which I will are here. So it's what we have here. The amounts are not so important actually because it's all about proportions. So here I'm going to move these away, and we're going to start the mixing process. And I also have my trusty spatula because this is very important. You need either a spatula or a wooden spoon, else your hands are going to get really sticky very quickly. So this part is going to be the mixing of the bread, and it's pretty simple. All you need to do is to put your flour into a large mixing bowl. We have a very large mixing bowl in our house. Put the flour in, make a little hole in the center. Actually, that's not really necessary, but it just looks nice. There we sprinkle our yeast on our salt all over. I put a little bit more salt, so I put a little bit more than 1 teaspoonful of salt because it makes the bread taste more like focaccia. Focaccia is normally a little bit salty, and there's about 1 teaspoonful of dried yeast as well. I have altogether 400 grams of flour. You can put this bread flour and all-purpose or plain flour in any proportion you want, but it should be at least 50% bread flour. So here I have 250 grams of bread flour and 150 grams of plain flour, which I think is a nice mix that makes the bread nice and soft. After which I'll just sprinkle the rosemary all over. Put in the oil. This is olive oil, gives it a really nice Italian kind of taste. And also makes the bread a little bit more supple as we go. I'll just pour that in the center. You don't want to. So you get the gusto Italiano with all this, and then you just pour the water in. I'm not very picky about things, so you see that the little hole in the center doesn't really matter. And what you do is you mix. You just want to mix it slowly. You don't want to mix it such that the flour flies all over the place. And as I mix, because it's going to be boring just to watch the together. So what we want to do now is, once it comes together into a more or less a pretty decent looking ball of dough, what we need to do now is to let the dough rest. So bread making is not something that you can do. Bread making takes time, and so that's one thing that's nice. There's a bit of a meditative aspect to this. So what we need to do now is we need to let this dough rest, or in baker's terms, to proof the dough, to allow the yeast, which is mixed in there. The yeast is alive. It's a microorganism, to start eating up all the flour and the sugars that's in the flour, so that it starts poofing up. Okay, that's not scientific. That's just me. Okay, once it starts poofing up, then that's where the little holes in the bread would come. So here, what we're going to do is this is a very less kneading, a low knead dough. Okay, I'll say that again because it sounds weird. A low knead dough. You don't knead it very much. All you need to do is to let it rest. And in about 45 minutes or 1 hour, I'll come back again to fold it, and I'll show that to you in a little while.
Right, so now's the time where we start folding. As I said, we don't need to knead this dough, which is to push and pull it a lot, but we do have to give it time, give the yeast time to work, and to work the dough, to fold it in some way. So this, I always find it useful to have wet hands as you do this. And so what you do is you have to knead, you have to stretch and fold. So there are two ways of doing it. One would be to fold it like this. You just pull it up by the two sides, let it fold over your fingers, and then you push it down, and then you press it in, and then you do another fold and press it in, and you stretch. Sometimes you might want to stretch it and fold it, right? You might want to stretch it and fold it. And always, if things start sticking, then you just wet your hands a little and stretch it. You don't really need to do it that many times. All you need to do is to do it a couple of times and let it rest. Right, and now we're back for our second time of folding and stretching. You'll notice that there is a plastic bag. You have to cover the dough so that it does not dry out. You can use a cloth, or you can be like me and use a cheap plastic bag that I keep solely for this purpose. And there we are. You can see that the dough has already grown quite a lot bigger. It's nice and smooth and no longer shaggy before. So I'm gonna wet my fingers a little bit, and I'm going to stretch and fold it. So I'm going to fold it once. I'm going to stretch it a little bit, fold it again. Okay, fingers again a little bit more. I'm gonna stretch and fold. So the other way of doing it would be this. I can show you the other way of doing it. Would be to take one corner, fold it in, take another corner, fold it in, take another corner, stretch it and fold it in, take the last corner, stretch it and fold it in. And these are the two ways that you can stretch and fold the dough so that the gluten gets developed and it gets nice and fluffy later. Welcome back. It's the next morning. What I did was I folded it 3 times and put it into this plastic container to proof overnight in the fridge, because I didn't have time to bake it yesterday evening. And you will see that it's grown humongous. It actually grew and burst over the top of this. So what I did was I pushed it down a little, and so now we are ready to put these into the tins. What we do is I have a little bench scraper, which is just this piece of plastic. Sometimes it's metal. I'm going to cut this in half. See, it's going to deflate a little bit more. And what I will do is I will take this half, roughly, just unceremoniously rip it apart. And what you do is you just shape it. If you have, I'll have my baking tin here. Let's put it this way. Just shape it such that it fits there. The baking tin has been oiled. You can see it's a little oily on the inside. The baking tin has been oiled. I put a little bit more oil, around a teaspoonful for the whole baking tin, because focaccia tastes better when it's a little crispy at the bottom, and the oil at the bottom will give it a little nice bit of a crisp. So what you do here is you shape it, just pull it into this. There are much better ways of doing this. I'm not exactly very aesthetic about how my dough looks, and here we are. And there we have the 2 loaves. I'm going to leave this to rest for about half an hour before I put the oven up to about 210 degrees Celsius. And then we will bake. Right, and look, the bread is done. We're going to take them out of the oven and we're going to cool them for a few minutes before we can take them out of the tins. So what we would normally have to do is to wait for maybe about 3 to 5 minutes for the bread to cool down and to contract a little away from the sides of the baking tin. And sometimes it would help to just run a butter knife around the sides of all the of the baking tin, after which you can give it a little shake and there it is. You can see that the added oil has made all these bits very nice and crispy, and there we have it, 1 of 2 focaccia loaves. And so the temptation always is to cut into it immediately, but the bread is still cooking after it comes out of the oven. So it's important for us to be patient, just as we have been patient already, and to wait in a loaf like this, maybe to wait about half an hour before cutting into it and enjoying yourself. And there you have them, the 2 focaccia loaves, fruit of the earth and work of human hands. Amen.